Dane, you talk a lot about a third factor, helping people get through peak pressure moments, and the pressure equation you have of importance, uncertainty, and volume is so interesting. How does that break down?
The whole idea of getting to an equation, it really started by asking, by now 7,000 people about the most pressure they'd ever been under. And when you ask people about the most pressure they've ever been under, you get a massive range of responses, right? We've had standard stuff like taking a big exam, giving a big presentation, but all the way up to, people who swum too far out from shore and were worried they couldn't get back in, or, going through a difficult childbirth, And so you look at this and you're kind of like, okay, pressure is kind of life itself. Like there's nothing that unites these things. But when you do it enough, you actually start to see that there are really significant patterns in what creates pressure.
Okay.
And that's where the equation came out of, which is when you break it down, as different as these situations are, they tend to have these three things in common. So, the first thing that has to be there for humans to feel pressure is importance. And what I mean by that is the amount of pressure we feel in a situation is directly correlated to how important I have coded the outcome of that situation as.
How much it matters.
How much it matters to me, right? And that's a great flip. What it means is if you're feeling pressure, you must be doing something that matters to you, right? Which is, most entrepreneurs, they're doing something that matters to them, so they're going to feel pressure. Now, just because something matters to you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to create pressure. You need the second part of the equation there, which is uncertainty. Because no matter how important something is to me, if I know exactly how it's going to go, it's not really going to
I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah, right? And there's
I know the outcome already.
Well, exactly. If I know the outcome already, I might feel a heightened sense of, oh, this matters to me, but it's not really going to be a high pressure situation. So we really find pressure at the intersection of importance and uncertainty. This really matters to me, and I don't know how it's going to go. And what's interesting is there's a real interplay between those two.
I'm sure.
Right? So, I'll use just a very simple example. Like if I've bought a $5 lottery ticket, the 99.99999% uncertainty is not really going to create that much pressure because importance is relatively low. If I'm getting wheeled down a hospital corridor to a life-saving surgery with a 90% success rate, there's only 10% uncertainty, but there's going to be a fair amount of pressure there, right? Because it really is the multiplication of the importance and the uncertainty.
Well, and then you add volume to that. So where does volume tie in?
Yeah, so volume is really the force multiplier, right? Which is, okay, what's the sheer volume of tasks, of decisions, of distractions that surround our important, uncertain situations? And I think that what, you talked about peak pressure moments. One of the things that I really realized when I started studying pressure is these three things, importance, uncertainty, and volume, they really combine in two main ways. You have your peak pressure moments, and these are really sort of violent collisions of importance and uncertainty. This is, the big pitch meeting. This is, I got to go out and sell my story to the street, and it's a binary outcome. Then you have the long haul of pressure, which is just generally like unrelenting volume. Importance and uncertainty are there, but they're not dominant.
But then it just keeps coming at you in volume.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the weight.
When you think about the 100+ Olympic medal athletes that you've coached, and you think about their peak pressure moments and how it translates into the business environment for an entrepreneur building resilience, what are the overlaps?
I wish I could claim credit for personally coaching 100+, but it's the whole team at Third Factor. We've been working for 30 years with athletes and coaches, and I think what we've learned is that pressure is a uniquely human experience that manifests quite similarly across very different domains. Our founder, Peter, often talks about it like gravity, right? It's kind of like gravity looks very different on Mars than it does on Earth, but it's still gravity, right? And the same is true with pressure. So, sport is a wonderful R&D laboratory.
Right.
Because the pressure is intense and the results are easily measured. In our world...
And you never know the outcome.
Well, the uncertainty is acute. Anne Merklinger, who runs On the Podium, her thing is, they don't just mail the medals out based on the world rankings. You got to go and compete, right? You never know exactly how it's gonna go. And so what we find is that whether it's sport, business, government, academia, pressure comes from different sources, but the responses as humans we have to pressure are very similar, right? Elevated heart rate, cortisol, adrenaline, muscle tension, shallow breathing up in your chest, and all of these conspire to present some real challenges.
Yeah, affects performance.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it can affect performance in both ways. So this is, the subtitle of the book is Why Pressure Isn't the Problem, It's the Solution. And this, for me, it was a little bit provocative because especially in 2022, people read this and they're like, has this guy been in a coma for the last 2 years? Because,
Right.
it certainly seems like
Right.
pressure's done some bad things. The goal of this is to say that pressure is really a double-edged sword, right? Where do more world records get set, in the world of sport than anywhere else? The Olympic Games, because there's pressure, right? Pressure can be hugely energizing. And what we see with pressure is, pressure can also lead to choking. When you look at the growing conversation on workplace mental health, right? Stress is the number one cause of short-term disability.
And a growing problem.
Absolutely.
Significantly growing problem.
Absolutely. And so I do think the people who are, very successful over time, and by the way, I use success not just in terms of kind of achievement, but in terms of, okay, well, how much satisfaction or regret do I carry, over the long haul? They tend to be what I call kind of pressure ambidextrous. And what I mean by that is they can navigate the long haul of pressure, they can keep their motivation, their health, their satisfaction intact, and they're able to nail their peak pressure moments. And what's interesting is, you might think, okay, those are similar skill sets, right? Navigating pressure is navigating pressure. It's not really the case. What I've actually learned is that navigating the long haul is quite different than nailing peak pressure moments.